the live stream meeting. Brent will be monitoring all that. There's Eric. Hey, Eric.
Paul, how goes it?
Good. By the way, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For those of you, you'll find out more about Eric soon, everybody. But Eric owned CRMWatchlist.com, which he literally, I had no idea. And then he contacted me and offered it to me. And I got it free of charge too. He didn't try, he just wanted to give it to me, which is wonderful. And I appreciate it.
That's
Now,
awesome.
I have to figure out, I know now I have to figure out, I have to use it.
Yeah, that's the complicated part, right?
Always. Okay. Nicole is coming. All right. So as everyone knows, this is the first, we're testing something, basically. We're trying to see, doing a happy hour live, if anybody gives a crap at all, besides us on here, right? Right. And wants to check in, and B, just to see how well it works, just out in terms of the stream itself and so on and so forth. So we're streaming on, let's see, Brent, what are we streaming on? What is this?
Right now, I know for sure we're on LinkedIn, we're on Periscope/Twitter, and we're on Facebook. And I'm just checking to see if we're on YouTube.
Okay. So at least 4 different channels. This
What?
is not going to be a
TikTok?
regular event. This is going to be, TikTok. No, only after
Yeah.
this. After this.
We're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay, so we're on 4 channels. And this is not going to be regular, though. This is once in a great while. We're going to do this and see what happens. That's all. So just so everyone knows.
Check out Ed with the killer view.
Tell me.
Where are you, Ed? Where are you? Unmute. Yeah, thank you.
Hi everybody. I'm on 92nd Street and 3rd Avenue in
At
New
the
York
Y.
City.
Oh,
There was a little emergency today, so my wife and I had to run in and take care of the baby. And everything's fine. They're upstairs. There wasn't enough room in the apartment, so I'm out here. I set myself up. It was beautiful at a bench, and then the heavens opened up. So now I'm under a little overpass. Did not want to miss this event.
Yeah. Last
Yeah.
year.
Let's just make sure everybody's all right first there, Ed. We don't need to see you here if there's some stuff going on, okay? Is everybody okay?
Oh yeah, everybody's fine. It's a minor emergency, but we needed to take care of the baby.
You're taking care of the grandkid?
Well, not right now. Yes, absolutely. My
All right,
wife.
bring out the kid.
I'm sorry.
Bring out the kid.
First of all, the child is on the 32nd floor of this apartment building, and there's just not enough room. She was napping. My daughter-in-law needed to be in her bedroom. It doesn't matter. I'm here. I made it. Everybody's fine. Thank you for asking.
Right,
Talk about determination, Paul, right?
well, and you are probably the most singularly determined human being I know.
Thank
For
you.
all kinds of reasons. And all good, though. So, you know what? So look, I mean, so here's this kind of thing. You know what actually occurred to me? Because, every time we do this, we do these introductions. And we do have a question, by the way, for today, which you'll recognize, some of you will recognize as similar to a question once asked, but not exactly the same. So it occurred to me, though, the combinations are different all the time, right? There's like, for example, Eric's brand new on the calls, right? And there are people who are on, like Nitin's been on a couple of the calls, now I guess 3, right? Or 4. But some of you didn't meet Nitin due to other calls, right? I mean, because you were on other calls. So the introductions, which must be very tiring for especially Bob, since this would be his 15th introduction.
Or we're just tired of hearing from Bob.
Especially
I have a recording for that.
No.
Brent, we
Especially
have to be gracious hosts.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially
So,
given the cap that Bob's wearing. I mean, come on, that cap at some point needs to.
Go off. Yeah.
Yes.
well, unfortunately, the only one who could take it off is him. So nobody can flip it off.
Come on, Nitin. Maybe Sumaran. Could you just reach over and just?
And I remember I had to say something. I'm a big fan of 49ers. No. Boston. No.
No. We practiced this. You're supposed to say, "I hate the Patriots." That's all.
Oh, yeah. That's what I remember. I hate the
That's not exactly what came out.
Yeah, so Brent, how much are you paying people now?
Not enough, apparently, because
That's funny.
Meanwhile, Nitin, I'm loving your jersey. What is it?
Yeah. So, as Paul and Brent said, that this was going to be live broadcast, so I had to wear my best shirt. And so this is the best shirt that I own, right? And it's a 50th anniversary, circa 1997, Jackie Robinson, Brooklyn Dodgers jersey, which I realized I've lost some weight along the
Wow.
way. So
Love it.
yeah.
But what I need to know is,
the
are
only
you?
person who would have lost some weight because we all have gained weight. At least I have gained weight personally.
Oh, yeah.
Are you from Brooklyn?
No, I grew up in Ohio, but I grew up a Dodger fan. That's a long story. It's longer than what this podcast will entail. But
Paul were born and raised in Brooklyn.
I was listen, man. I'm actually unusual. I'm a New York kid who grew up and was born and raised in the early days of Long Island. I was actually literally born on Long Island. One of the very few who didn't migrate there. Because
Hey now.
my parents were Brooklyn and Bronx, both of them, right?
Yeah.
But I grew up. I was born in Levittown, which was the first along with
Yeah.
Levittown, the
nah,
very first suburb in history. And Levittown was 3 years old when I was born, right? As a suburb, meaning suburbs were only 3 years old when I was born. So it dates me considerably. But the reality is that I'm literally probably 1 out of 100 people who will ever, when you say you're a New Yorker, that's actually a baby boomer who's born on the island.
Yeah.
Rarity. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Ren, did you match your hat and your t-shirt and your drink?
It almost kind of worked that way. But,
Coordinated, son.
Well,
By
the way-
that's the only way you can get a bright color. Putting the yellow on with them and keep the light on there.
clearly,
Will do,
this
Bob.
event. Clearly, this event as being live is falling apart already. Right?
It really is. I'm trying to just read a couple of comments. Well, 2 comments from Thomas.
He's gotten on his plane yet?
He says, "Have fun. Still stuck at the FFM airport. And customer experience of the third kind." Doesn't sound good.
I don't want to know what FFM stands for. I mean, I assume it's actually the airport code, but he being stuck there for so long, it probably stands for something else by now.
Could have double meanings, yeah.
Frankfurt's probably in there somewhere, but something else as well.
Yeah, there is an additional F, maybe there.
Yes, buddy.
Poor guy. He has had the worst luck with flights lately.
Well, I think it's kind of built into flying at this point.
There is that.
I don't know if everybody hears the thunder.
Yeah, I hear it, but it's over my head too, because there's a storm going on here.
Okay, but
Same for me.
every time Brent speaks is when the thunder goes off.
I like that. Really?
Bring in the
He's channeling Thor.
We had this storm last night that was just at 3:45 roughly in the morning, just like lightning and thunder started going off, and then worse, because for some reason they issued a flash flood warning immediately. No, there was no actual reason ultimately for it. That was affecting Manassas. Our phones went off. My iPhone sounded like a giant Amber Alert had just hit.
Yeah,
Right? And it was literally sitting by the bed too, so it just went right, and every phone in the house started ringing subsequently, and in addition to the thunder and the lightning. So basically, my wake time was about 4:15 this morning because of that. So Well, yeah, but these are the storms that I think you guys are about to get, or at least you're about to get, Brent. That was the one we were getting.
They usually travel up north.
Yeah,
they hit us and then go up that way.
Oh, that's actually true. I forgot you're further south.
Well, we've actually got a tropical storm. I think it's actually a hurricane, technically, down off the coast of southern Baja. So it's not going to make it all the way up as far as Southern California, but apparently our local mountains are going to have a chance of rain, which is completely bizarre in August for us, needless to say.
Maybe it'll put out some of those forest fires.
Yeah, no kidding. Wouldn't it be nice?
That'd be nice for a change.
It would.
Well, I'll tell you what. So since Eric's our new guy here, why don't you start and introduce yourself to people, and then everybody go around quickly and continue on.
Sure. Well,
remember to tell us what you're drinking, or we have to cut you off.
Yes. So I'm Eric Posel, and I've met none of you, but I've read most of you guys' things over the last several years. First question, I am drinking. I'm in Seattle, so it's 12:30 or 12:45. So it's I still have my workday ahead of me still. So I am drinking a Diet Coke on the rocks without the Jack. So not very excited. One of these times I will have a beer in my hand because I'll keep my afternoon open, but that would be the typical thing would be a beer.
I'll tell you what, it's proof that you're on the West Coast, but not in California if you're not drinking a beer. That's for some reason, everybody who gets on this from California is drinking a beer at 12:30 in the afternoon.
And not me today. I'm going non-alcoholic as well. So
not me either. I'm going with my lovely carrot juice.
I'm balancing out the crowd. We got Bailey's.
And I've got the Brent special here. So
nice. Cold brew coffee, but I could put some tequila in it.
Anything's possible, right?
So Eric?
Yes. So I got introduced to, I guess, since there's a lot of CRM sort of luminaries on this in this discussion. I started with first time I learned about CRM was way back in when I was at PeopleSoft and we were using Siebel, and everybody loved it, right? No, not exactly.
Really?
So just trying to be extra careful here. No, so I learned about that, and then I went to Salesforce, and I was in enterprise sales, so I kind of have maybe a different background than some of the people on this call. But then I got into the consulting, foray, if you will, and really I started just on my own. We had our third child, and so Salesforce was a great place to work way back when. I don't know now with 50,000 people what it's like, but certainly back in 2005, 2006, it was great. But I couldn't really travel as much as I needed to as a salesperson, and third child on the way, so I needed to find something that was more suitable to what I wanted to do. And so it really just started as helping companies. There was a big gap way back when with companies not having, they would buy a subscription or license, it could have been Salesforce or really anything. And there wasn't a lot of really SIs up here or system integrators or any sort of consulting services. There was pretty much one firm that supported the kind of ecosystem for Salesforce, and then a couple others here or there in the Microsoft ecosystem. So anyway, that was really where kind of things got started. And there was a lot of pretty big gap there, I'd say, for just finding what I would consider punch list type of consulting as opposed to full implementations and the like. And then, of course, being a salesperson, former salesperson, the question I got all the time is, can you look at our contract? And I was astonished at what people were paying. And this wasn't just Salesforce, but just anybody. So that became kind of a nice way to help a company just to right size their investment or realize, are you really do you really need this much when you're not using what you're paying for? So a lot of things like that kind of, brewed into a number of different types of projects. And so that's, if you want to look at what we've evolved to, it's a lot of what I've described, a lot of evaluations, a lot of companies looking to switch. We do a lot of what I would consider clandestine work where the company doesn't want the vendor to know that they're looking at something. I'm sure some of you guys have had lots of private conversations, and those are very sensitive. So we end up in a lot of those situations. That's kind of a lot of what goes on. And we've gotten into other areas outside of CRM. So there's the world of low code and application platforms, as well as companies just building custom apps and finding ways to do that, and whether they're going to leverage Salesforce for their customer base, ServiceNow for their employees or IT kind of asset management space, or others as well. So we kind of see which way do they want to go in terms of figuring out where they're build. So that's sorry to throw a lot at you, but that's kind of a lot of the things that are kind of going on in our world right now, I'd say.
That kind of proves that you've never been on one of these things. That's not a lot at all.
Eric, I'm fascinated by that because I think you're touching on the kind of mashup, train wreck, however you want to describe it, that seems to be happening in a lot of companies where it's really the question of, what is the collection of platforms or core systems that a company is going to use, and how do you put those pieces together as effectively as possible and try to create some degree of consistency, especially if you're talking about customer facing operations. It's fascinating for sure. I'm sure no mean feat either, working with customers trying to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of APIs out there, and people are very proud of their APIs and how easy it is to connect things. And then when you go talk to a company and they say, yes, we know about the API, and yes, it doesn't do what we need it to do, and it's more complex than a lot of certainly the software vendors pointed.
Yeah, it's that kind of.
We have an API for this. We have a whole library of APIs. It just it's easy. Just let it just connect to each other, and everything just works fine.
Are you saying that you can't go from Salesforce Classic with like 75, 80% code coverage into Lightning in 6 weeks?
Well, that's what they say. I'm not saying, I'm not going to, they're never wrong.
I was being very, very facetious.
There's a manual on YouTube for that.
Yeah. And now my favorite thing is when companies start to ask about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and they're still trying to get their forecasting right. So, blocking and tackling is, I know a lot of the vendors, and I'm sure there's probably countless vendors in this space now that all talk about AI and machine learning and some of the newer concepts. They're in the CRM watch list. Like, I'm sure Paul's seen the countless presentations on some of these their capabilities here, and I really, this is a question I have for a lot of you. If you would know better than I would. We are all about blocking and tackling, and just still fixing like fundamental challenges that companies have, and it's as simple as, yes, forecasting is important, yes, opportunity management is important. People are just trying to get their people to use the system. And even though we have some great tools out there that are, I mentioned Salesforce, ServiceNow, and some of the smaller players in CRM, they have really good UIs, but they're, what's the issue is that people aren't using it. So that's a lot of what we're seeing. So I don't know that some of these newer concepts are really going to solve that, but that's why I'm kind of curious what you guys are actually seeing. Is this AI stuff real, or is this just the next layer of marketing that we're seeing from some of these vendors to try to move some product?
How much of the problem?
I was going to say, as always, is garbage in, garbage out to the system.
Yeah.
So.
How much of the problem is due to a lack of really good training on how to use it?
Or even beyond training.
Yeah, the concept of training, exactly.
Yeah, it might not even be training. How has anybody consulted the people who are going to be using these systems the most on whether this is what they want and need to work with? A lot of times you need to start from the bottom, not the top. And it sounds simple and almost facile, but it's something that is often missed with implementation.
Yeah,
The word comes down from above, and it feels like an imposed solution, and nobody on the line of business wants to use the new system because they didn't ask for this.
Just spot on, Marshall. It goes around like a human-centered design, asking the questions and spending a life and times of a certain user and figuring out what they need best and most, and what they think they need most that they may not, and work around the whole thing and make it a proper implementation. Yeah.
We
I think
we did a big research project a few years back where what we discovered was that companies relied a great deal more on call it learn through experience as opposed to actually training. And that is, instead of, it was sort of the way I learned to swim. Throw you in the water and figure out how to get to shore, as opposed to actual formal training. And one of the things we saw was very simply 4 hours worth of training would save 6 weeks in terms of getting up to speed.
It's interesting though, because I think, and to Marshall's point, part of the challenge here is it's not even so much about training, it's about how intuitive the tools themselves are and how well they're actually designed for the people using them as opposed to the people buying them, right? I mean, I think that's part of the challenge too. Salesforce initially was designed for sales managers. It was not designed for salespeople. And that's still the problem that we're facing. And what is interesting to me, and to your question, Eric, I'm curious what others see, but I certainly have a lot of confidence that some of the newer apps, and here's where it's not about AI generally, it's about very specific applications of AI, are actually doing some cool things. And a lot of it is where there's, for example, a voice assistant that's actually an interface that salespeople are in many cases far more inclined to use, that is actually prompting and giving information and also effectively uploading information from salespeople and really sort of specifically defined contexts as well, like prep before the customer meeting, follow-up actions after the meeting, that kind of stuff. And I think that stuff is not really, I mean, it's complex from an NLP kind of standpoint, but it's not the most leading edge AI. It's just actually really effective because it's doing something that feels a more natural part of the way a lot of salespeople actually work. And if that is what contributes to better data going into the system, I mean, that's actually a huge win for everybody, right? So I've definitely seen some really good examples where that's happening, but I think that's still the minority of cases out there.
Marshall, I'll take it one step back from who it is that is actually using the system to, does everybody understand that there's a business process behind these systems? And does everybody agree upon those business processes? And then we can go to the end users and say, how do you want those business processes presented in the CRM or the app built on the platform, no matter which platform it is? Oh boy. And then the training, change management. It's actually change management, training being a subset of that, all kicks in, and it needs to not happen one at a time. It needs to happen continuously as you develop, as you discover what the end users need, and then you document along the way, and then can train from there. And I'm talking too much.
No, you're making a fair point, Ed. That's definitely part of the issue, especially when you're dealing with larger organizations who just want to get people up to speed as fast as possible. It really does help with learning and retention and getting the most out of not only the software stack, but out of the job itself, to know why you're doing something, not just how to do it. If you understand what the process is, why you are putting this information in, what benefit it's going to have to your job and to your manager and to everybody else, then it matters. It's not just a task. It's part of, your responsibility to the company. I got a thumbs up. Woohoo!
One of the companies that we worked with on this large project was a chemical outfit that operated in 44 countries. Now, one of the things they did was train their managers as trainers in root cause failure analysis, and then they sent them out to their suppliers and said, okay, when you type in a 4 into this information system, because we're using an ERP, that means the CEO is sharing that 4. So you need to make sure that that 4 is correct. And they actually reduced their shipping errors from, they were having 90,000 shipment failures a month, and that went down to 20,000. And then they started tracking packages, which jumped it back up to 90,000. And then 6 months later, that was down to 20,000. So the fact that they committed to that, and they committed their management to it, they committed their people to it, and then they sent out trainers to suppliers. They spent a lot of money to make sure that somebody was just going 4 when they meant 4, not 5 when they meant 4.
So I think, getting back quickly to Eric's point, a couple of points of note. First, for what I found is usually a loaded question to ask a vendor is, how do you use your product in your organization? And if there's utter silence on the other end, or we need to get a demo ready for you in 2 weeks, that tells you a lot, right? Related to that, it's been long enough I can claim, enough distance from it, but as a former Siebel Systems person, when we shipped Siebel 7, we shipped a what we called a one-click upgrade, which I'm sure, Eric, you know what a one-click upgrade is, right? You just turn it on and it moves up, right? Those types of things are always dangerous from a vendor's perspective because nobody knows what that really means. And then, just getting back, then quickly to how do you use the system? Back in the day, and I can now say this again, 2 decades removed, I remember towards the end of a quarter, there would be chaos inputting data into the CRM, at Siebel, and then it would be exported into Excel to analyze. Something is lost in that process, right? So again, I think, one of the critical things that you should be asking your vendor or the vendors, Eric, that you're looking to, rationalize is how are they using their own system to run their own business? Even if the business is not, it could be heavy manufacturing, it could be, consumer packaged goods, and they're a software vendor, but still that gives you a sense of what went into it and how much their own end users were involved in the design of that system.
Yeah.
By the way, I'd like to respond to Nicole's statement. It's getting lots of press out here in the chat screen. I agree with you, Nicole. Everybody has to understand their own role and their own process for for collecting money, for invoicing, for selling, for marketing, whatever it might be. However, that being said, it's putting all those individual processes together that makes up the business process of the organization. And our current ways of depicting business process, Lucidchart, Visio, XYZ, they don't do that. It's swim lanes. Who does this task? Rather than it being linear, saying, okay, this is done in accounting, and then it goes to invoicing, and then it goes to collections, and then it goes, but I do agree with you 100% that each person, and you're not being cynical, is they have to be interested in their own roles first. It's up to the CEO or the senior vice president to understand all of those. So it's put together there's a word I'm looking for. It'll come to me after the after the meeting, of course.
Another of those big chemical companies we worked with actually gave everybody what I would call the mall map of the company and their processes with a "you are here" note on it.
I like it.
That to every employee, you are here. This is where you are in this big system. It was actually pretty useful.
One thing which I want to add, I have been in this situation so many times since I work in sales effectiveness, and the focus of sales effectiveness is to make sure that we identify the right tools and then to make sure that they are adopted and we have some effectiveness. So even, and I have worked for almost led Fortune 10 companies to private equity turnaround. So even if we get all the things right, we consult all the stakeholders, do everything. One thing which really makes a difference is how do you align incentives for the salespeople, the sales directors? Do they have incentives to use the system which they have been provided? So to me, that works the best. Of course, you need to have the right tool. You need to make sure that it works. Somebody was talking about selling. So does it reduce their sales cycle? For AI perspective, does it help to reduce that opportunity life cycle, the sales life cycle? Does it give them insights so that they can move to the next stage? But those things are important. But even beyond that, that incentive, and I think the Stephen was just mentioning about all the roles and everything. So yes, all those matter.
Especially for sales people. It's been my experience that most sales, or not most, but a lot of them are notoriously bad at pricing. So you introduce this tool that's going to show them, hey, you're giving away more than what we're taking in. They don't like it. So trying to incentivize that. Plus, a little bit different with what Steve was saying with ERP systems and logistics people than salespeople and AI. They're not going to understand that. So a lot of tools we used in transportation, 3 different companies, 2 of them, when we switched over to new systems, they required those computer techs that were setting up the system to actually work as supervisors and operations managers on the floor, signing off loads, handing out hooks. I mean, same thing the rest of us doing, sweating just like the rest of us. So you need to know what they do and what they're facing so you can shape these inputs the way we need them.
Yeah, bingo. That's the money right there. It's not the generic tools, how the tools are specifically shaped to do particular well-defined jobs. And all the better if you can define that within the bigger picture of how all those jobs fit together.
So what you're saying when you say
computer engineer $50,000 for 6 months,
when you say how they're shaped, you mean how they're configured. Am I correct?
Yeah, it is configuration, but I think it's more than that too. I mean, what we're really talking about is creating the work environments for people. And that is, depending on the type of job, in some cases, almost exclusively digital, it's what's on your screen. And in other cases, like if you're on the shop floor managing logistics or a manufacturing process, that's going to be a real combination of physical and digital stuff. So it's actually creating that work environment with a concept of, how do you make the right thing to do, the easy thing to do? I'm a big fan of behavioral economics, so forgive the bias here. I think this is really about designing the systems effectively, right? And you want to design the systems so that whoever is using those tools does not have to think too hard about how to use them effectively, so that they're concentrating on the things that they really do need to think about in their jobs.
By the way, if I might throw in my cynicism here, we're talking about all these things in a vacuum, because what you need to throw into is budgets, personalities, politics, regulations, depending upon industry. And that is going to sway considerably how effective your design is going to be, and of course the outcome.
A lot of the sales process and the transparency between sales operations and finance and all those people who decide whether a deal goes through or not. And sorry, I'm being more focused on sales side because that's the world I live in. But yeah, I do agree that there are a lot of other factors, and if we can be transparent, then things can really move fast. And all the sales people, they will have much more stake in that system, using that system and executing everything through that. Because from their perspective, it works now. And it gives them better deal than sending emails or all that stuff.
Well, and I think all those factors are certainly true, but I think if you create a lousy end user experience and make the system very incredibly difficult to use, you're going to limit your adoption of that system.
Ultimately, Ed's point on personalities means most of this, to be honest. You think about it, everyone has, to everyone's point earlier, each person involved has a job they have to do or they lose their job. And they don't like it, or if they do like it, that's going to impact what they want or how they act or where they, let's say, who they're willing to talk to or who they're willing to trust and so on. And to me, I guess the best way to put it is you're sitting there and let's assume you have a fairly large organization that involves hundreds of thousands of people, each with an individual personality, each with a different job. And the best you can possibly do is figure out, okay, well, which are the outcomes that these individuals require, and how are we going to optimally define it so that it works for as many of them as we can, because there's no way it's going to work for everyone no matter what you do. It's why CRM's historic adoption rates have always been, at least let's call it, they've been lower than we would like them to be, but they still are sufficient enough to make CRM a pretty damn big industry, right? And it's valuable, and very valuable tools. The problem is always, but you always have people who are going to bitch about it regardless, right? Right. So, ultimately you're sitting there and you're trying to work out, it kind of goes to the idea of behavior always, right? Which is, okay, well, is these 500, let's say 1,000 jobs to be done in any given enterprise that if they're not done, the enterprise breaks, or at least doesn't succeed at a lot of its goals, and people's heads will roll, or will be even better if it does succeed. And then you're designing something that optimally says, and this is optimal, meaning, okay, of those 1,000 jobs, I think we can make about 650 of them work pretty well. And the other 300, maybe not as well, but good enough. And the other 50, well, something's got to change, or they're just going to go bad, and they may be the ones that break the system too. So, and ultimately, when you're sorting it all out, then you have the people saying, well, okay, that's great that you say that, but I don't really, your earlier point, Nicole, I don't really care about that. What I really care about is going home at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, or what I really care about is getting through my day, or what I really care about is lunch, or what I really care about is my job, right? And the things I'm doing in my job. And unfortunately, every one of those factors, and then go to more of Ed's points on regulation and you name it, come into play. Even in a smaller environment, it becomes difficult to do. On the other hand, one good thing about all of that horrible sounding thing I just said is that we're talking about an industry that's now $45 billion, and people are not so stupid that they're going to keep investing in technologies that are not working ever, right? In fact, because the technologies have actually enabled a lot of those things to work. So, and that's when you start getting into the look. I mean, if you look at all the major vendors, and I mean like pretty much all of them, ultimately they're pretty well offering versions of the same thing, right? The big ones. I mean, there's always niche players who have some unique capability they offer, and even the big guys, they do some things better than the other ones do, right? In one case or another case, but let's put it this way. Something's called a service cloud because it can be defined that way, and they're pretty much all about the same in what they're trying to offer, right? Otherwise, you have no definition, right? So ultimately, then what does that depend on? It depends on how much you trust the company you're working with, and it depends on how much you trust the people at that company you're working with. Like, for example, let's take Nitin's company, right? Servicenow. They're really a fascinating company in a lot of ways because, they came on the scene pretty much, I mean, they've been around a while, but they came in our scene, so to speak, the customer-facing specific scene. What, about 5 years ago now, Nitin? 6?
We launched about 4.5, 5 years ago.
Okay, 5 years ago with CSM, right? At the time, CSM, now customer workflow. And they made a big splash immediately. And the reason they did, aside from the quality of the people who actually worked there, which is pretty exceptional, and one of those who's supposed to be on the call isn't Terrence. The quality of the product was astounding, right? I mean, it really was. I mean, it does what it says it does. It does the way it was put to me when I first ran across them. And I didn't know them when they were doing ITSM. I only knew them when they were doing CSM. I mean, I knew of them, but I didn't meet them. This is the way it was put to me. We don't do customer service operations. We do customer service operations. Wow, that scared somebody. We do customer service operations, meaning they focus on the operational side, and they weren't focusing on experience and so on and so forth. But and they did it just pretty much because they did have such a strong focus on it, and they had really good teams building it. They really, really did a great job at providing exactly what people needed to run ops when it came to service operations. And you look at their client list, and it pretty much shows what they do. Now, the world shifts, and all of a sudden, customer engagement, customer experience are like the watchwords of our faith, as we say in Judaism. Right? The watchwords of our faith are customer engagement, customer experience. And regardless, and CRM itself has become strictly an operational enabling tool for enabling operations. Not what we wanted it to be, but it's what it became. So now Servicenow is faced with an interesting, let's call it this way, an interesting question. How do you show the impact of these enablement tools on the customer experience? Which you can, but you have to show it. Why? Because ultimately the people who are involved in this stuff are asking for that, right? They want to know, look, the biggest problem with all of this was customer experience became the thing, and now every company in the world is saying customer experience. But guess what? All those people who we've just been talking about are still doing the same damn jobs they were doing 4 or 5 years ago too, with some nuances. That's it. And that's what they still care about, but the powers that be care about other things. So you still have to bridge the gap as a vendor, so to speak. You still have to bridge the gap between, all right, here's what people want, here's what the management teams think they want, and here's the people still doing these jobs, right? And even though, and it's the same damn job, right? It's, again, maybe it's focused a tiny bit differently. Maybe they've got 5 new tasks they got to carry out in a given day. Maybe they've dropped 3 other ones, but ultimately, unless they've been promoted to an entirely different job, they're doing very similar ones.
Let me offer a
So I think you touch upon, so Paul, you touch upon one of the critical challenges. First of all, thank you for the kind words towards my current employer. I'm on PTO this week, so I'm not representing my employer per se. But I think one of the challenges, and I've spent 2+ decades in this space, mostly on the trying to sell the software and trying to sell the vision of the software across multiple vendors. The challenge that you face is the vision that you lay out to the people that buy the product. Oftentimes, by the time the product goes live, they've been either promoted or fired based off of the purchase of that product or not. And the people that inherit it have different view of how a business should run, right? And historically, and this goes back to the conversation that you had with Bob Stutz about, I think he struck a chord with me when he said, look, these are command and control systems. What matters in command and control systems is who's commanding and who's controlling and what their point of view is, right? So suddenly you've bought something that fits for the current management. New management comes in and say, this doesn't work for us. But you've now done this capital expenditure that you need to spend down. So then you bring in these third parties to tweak it and bend it and shape it and morph it. And I already mentioned before, I was at Siebel Systems back in the day. I go into environments today that are running Siebel. They say that they're running Siebel. I go and look at it and I'm like, no, you're showing me a mainframe screen. What is this that you're doing here? No, this is Siebel behind the scenes. So incrementally evolves to this monstrosity, partially because they were command and control designed. They weren't designed for and again, I don't mean to pitch our product, but they weren't designed for a malleable workflow. They were designed to really records management, right? CRM, customer records management. It's an activity log against a contact record. That's all it is. Work doesn't get done there. And so that's been a problem that what we tried to solve, it predates me arriving at ServiceNow, but that's an area that we really looked at very closely when we designed what we designed.
Two points here. One, if you think I think you hit on something there with the CIO who decides that this is the system we're going to buy. First of all, they're a little bit, they understand the system, but maybe the CEO does not. So if they pick something that's not the big well-known brand name, then it's their fault because they didn't pick the big well-known brand name.
Sure.
If they pick a big well-known brand name, then they can blame SAP or IBM or Salesforce or whoever. And if they pick a niche player who isn't known to the CEO and something goes wrong, then it's the CIO's fault. Second thing is, what we're seeing here to some degree is in a different environment where here was this tool that people were using in a factory, and everybody who used it actually put some tape on it to make the handle work better. And eventually the manufacturer came along and started making that tool with that already built in. And you're seeing the same thing on the service side. And that is, people are going, okay, here's what you've given me. It doesn't quite do what I want it to do. So instead of using your system to analyze the data, I'm going to download it to Excel and do what I know with Excel or something.
So what happens in that scenario is also those that are being told to use a system, and if they can influence the buying decision, they get fixated on certain feature sets and not the bigger picture. I can share a story from a past life in a sales cycle where we lost a deal that we should have won because our product didn't have a reply all button as a default feature. Sales cycle stretched for 6 months because of this reply all, because of a junior level person in the company said, this is not reply all, doesn't exist. We lost the deal. Our sales guy was so pissed off that he went back to the office, ripped off a key off of the keyboard, painted reply all to it and mailed it to her. You know, like it was like this, that what else are you gonna do at that point, right? It was a scenario where you just couldn't get around a conversation with somebody who had the ear of somebody that was important, that ultimately was not going to solve the problem. Now, the bias from a selling side is they lost an opportunity to change themselves, but who knows?
But isn't that why you have companies, ISVs, that connect to them to build out their solution where the needs are of the users, and then obviously these larger companies will then gobble up those other companies or develop their own solution in that same vein, and that happens all the time. So that goes along with your Steve, your analogy of the tool getting duct tape, and they say, okay, I'm going to use some duct tape, and then they go develop the tool that has that duct tape on it, and then they sell it, and all the connectors and everything have to go with it. So it's a natural evolution there and cycle.
I'd like to comment on what Stephen said about duct tape. That is so true. And what is missing when one entity adds duct tape to the tool and then another one adds their own take on it is documentation as to why they do it and what was the situation at the time that they made the decision to configure this way. Why did they go to code rather than configure declaratively? And Bob, I was going to reply to you, but I forgot what my question was. But I do want to say that I think I've got the best green screen in the world. It's sunny and 84 degrees here in New York City.
There you go.
Oh, and by the way, Eric, look what you started by introducing yourself.
That's right.
Well, I like to stir the pot, so I
making up for lost time.
I want to jump in real quick because we got a couple of questions and one comment from Alan, our buddy Alan
Berkson. Awesome.
Why does Jason have Zoom all over his face? someone get him a napkin. I don't know what the heck he's talking about, but what does that mean?
What?
He's looking at a bad screen.
Zoom?
Yeah, it has to be.
He said Zoom.
Yeah. It says yes. Maybe the Zoom logo is strategically placed. I really was hoping the Zoom logo would be over Bob's face, but if I have to miss, Jason's a good miss, so that's okay.
Jason, we'll stick up. I mean, he's just talking. You know, there. It's one of those things.
It is definitely one of those things. Anyway,
okay, Brad, I know your jealousy.
So Sven is out there. Sven is a buddy that's been on. I think he's been at least on one of these things, right?
Yeah, one.
So Sven has a couple of comments. He says, from a CX point of view, should sales and marketing departments dissolve? Why do we need to talk about channels and departmental thinking any longer?
Oh, I'm going to jump in on that one. I think it comes down to the types of characteristics that you want in certain kinds of job roles and the care and feeding that varies across those different groupings of characteristics. And I think the reason that we have departments is not because we're trying to create silos. The reason that we have departments is because we're trying to functionally build an organization that can identify and help to cultivate and also support those varying characteristics that we need for people doing different kinds of jobs.
Well, it's also getting them focused on, you know, where they are in the customer life cycle.
But it's also
absolutely
ultimately every department should be able to align itself to a particular line on a balance sheet, right? So they're aimed at different directives for the overall goal of an organization, right? And so this is part of in the world of CRM, my background is almost all in customer service. And one of the things that I've noticed is when customer service cannot find where it fits into the balance sheet or in the P&L statement of a company, like if you ask that of an executive, then you know that customer service is not taken very seriously in that organization. When you can help them understand where they fit and maybe they can promote that, it helps them. It helps me sell software too, but the fact is it helps them understand where they fit. But there are organizations where if you cannot connect that dot back, then you're not really well defined in running the business, right? And so I agree. I think the world of sales and marketing are so, and nowadays success, which who knows what that is today, right? All of those worlds they sit on top and around each other, right? But there's still reasons why you would put, for example, your business development or essentially your cold calling organization in sales as opposed to in marketing. In some companies, they put it in marketing, some companies, they put it in sales. And that oftentimes is an executive bias, but it's also where you are in the growth trajectory of your business, right?
I think customer service is sales. Is it not?
Again, so that's another.
It can be.
There's an argument for that. Yeah.
There's an argument for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is for late stage for mature companies. Renewals, renewals and existing customer base drive future success. And so in that scenario, and it's more often than not, it's in that scenario where if you talk to the executive who's running customer service where they cannot align themselves to a number on a balance sheet or on a P&L statement, that means that the company is lost, right? I mean, because they are tied to recurring revenue. They're tied to actually an even more important measure than all of them, which is I say, if customer service actually owns the most critical measure on a publicly traded company's balance sheet, it's called goodwill. Right? If something goes wrong, there's only two culprits. It's a product or service you made, or you weren't there for me when I needed you, right? And if you actually say that to those that are running customer service, they step back a little bit and say, never thought of that. And I'm like, this is obvious, right? If something fails, customer service is going to get flooded. If something fails, you are going to become the face that the chief executive hides behind, right? And so you need to think about what that means to structure yourself in the organization to operate in that mindset that you own goodwill, right? I mean, at minimum, that's what you own.
Customer retention is a much bigger deal than acquiring a customer is one thing. Keeping a customer is another, and there's evidence that it costs you 6 times as much to replace a customer as it does to keep one. So customer service.
So, Nathan, when you were talking, I was actually thinking the same thing applies to marketing, especially in the company which I work for. If marketing can't prove how their work is generating dollars or business or sales.
Sure, top line. Yep.
So when you were, it seems like I totally agree that sales and marketing need to be aligned. And that's one of the job which I do. But I do think that sales and marketing, at least in the organization where I have worked, they acquired some separate role. Marketing more on segmentation, digging deeper and looking into some other territories and product development. And sales is more on the execution side, even sales effectiveness, maybe there is a lot of overlap. We do want to have one common funnel, at least for the prospects which are, at a later stage. But that's where I have seen differences in different companies, as you rightly mentioned, a different level of where they are in their journey.
Yep.
But I feel that what you just said about, if they can count on what money they are generating, that's very true for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, one thing that occurs to me is a lot of, Ben's question originally into all this discussion too, is that there were attempts, if you remember, a slightly different approach here, but there were attempts, if you remember, about, I don't know, a decade ago maybe, on leveling the organization and democratizing the organization and so on and so forth. And they always fail every single time. They never succeed. And it's interesting. I mean, people very well intended, maybe, but I remember there was an organization called World Blue or something like that literally would hold these conferences, and there would be like 2,000 people talking about management leveling, and department dissolution, and everybody would sort of band together and be very communal about how they approach an enterprise or a business of any kind. And let's say this, it's telling that 10 years later they've made no impact on anything and don't exist anymore, and that nobody who tried that exists anymore, right, either, because ultimately there are reasons that there are departments, meaning there are different skill sets necessary, there are different tasks necessary in a company to make it work. Look, when we were doing CRM Idle years ago, the thing we were always looking for wasn't great technology, and same with the watch list, really. But I'm not looking for great technology, I'm looking for companies, right? How they function, how they work, how they look. One of the big there's a million fantastic technologies out in our universe that fail every year, right? And the reason they fail is because they don't know how to do anything else but develop technology. They have no idea. They have no idea how to reach out to the world and talk to them. There are some large vendors who don't know how to do that either, but that's another story. And the consequent result is, that's how societies work too, right? You may start simple, but you evolve to more complexity for a reason, because that's how you sustain greater and greater evolution and change and growth, because you need that complexity to do it. It's not that complexity isn't bad by nature, the same way bigness isn't bad by nature, right? I mean, that's a silly concept when people think that. And it's just how you implement an effect, right? And that complexity, right? It either works or it doesn't. And that gets to all the other points that were being made on, to Eric and Nitin's points both, really, which is, unfortunately, even when you build in let's call it the safeguards for the complexity, in addition to them being effective, being organized to be effective, you prevent them from failing too, right? Ultimately, personalities can get in the way of that, right? No matter what. And that goes to the other point, which is, to Eric made the point in one of his messages that a lot of time it's a relationship that seals the deal, even if it's not the right choice. Which is true. No, it's absolutely true. The problem with that, of course, is that the people who have that relationship better rethink it, because somebody just said, I don't really care whether this works for you, my friend. It works for me, right? And that's what, no, but that's actually the result.
So it's a relationship. It's a relationship, and then you also have to take into consideration the relationship, the business, and the horizon of that relationship, right? The fact is, if you get an executive that's come in that has 3 decades of experience, has done essentially the same sort of work in other places, they're likely to bring their crew, which may be internal as well as the vendors, in and impose things. Whereas others will say, look, this is a different world, different place. I will still get my advice from outside, but I'm going to see what this place looks like. And that's a difficult thing. And this is where I think, Eric, you're talking about this in kind of the back channel here. I think it's an area that we often overlook, right? I mean, the fact is those relationships really drive a lot of the decision making that happens.
Well, we've seen, I was going to say, we've seen for smaller or maybe mid-sized companies, they're much more in the like of what you would expect in terms of very thorough evaluation and probably deciding what's best at the more granular level user and process and function. When you get into the upper side of the mid-market and certainly larger companies, it's just a very different approach. So they will spend a lot of time looking at solutions, and this isn't just CRM, but it's very common in CRM, right? Is to go and spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort bringing in, evaluations and in the whole process of really trying to look at maybe a bake-off or playing one vendor out against another just for cost reduction and other purposes. But ultimately, like I said in just a recap in the chat window, is it really more times than not, and when I say more times, 6 or 7 out of every 10 deals are pretty much decided before or outside of the actual evaluation or process which they're formally doing for, again, procurement reasons, business reasons, and other things. And maybe they use that just because it happens that the stars align. And Salesforce is the biggest culprit of this, or kind of winner of this. So I'll use them as a kind of example.
Biggest player,
right? But they're gonna the team selects Salesforce, and the executive, whether it's an executive or CEO or even a board level decision, depending on the investment amount. If those align, great. If they go with another vendor in the decision process because this is going to be really good for their business, it's a good fit. They like the flow with the team that worked with them, and then the exec says, "No, we're going with Salesforce. I've got a relationship with so and so, or I know so and so. I feel like that's the safer choice, or that's the better choice," and they override it, and it happens. And then like the team's example, the person with the reply all, the salesperson, the sales manager, the more like the sales management at the company is going to say, you didn't form the right relationship at the right level with the company to win that deal. So it's and that's not fair, and it may not be true, but that's how this stuff works. And so it's very interesting.
Not a lot.
There are 2 things here, and both of them involve, the examples I'm going to use involve being there with Brent in Atlanta. One small firm that I know of there, the way the owner runs it is, he says, okay, we've got this business. Can you guys do this? Can you add this to your current workload, or do we need to hire somebody new? Now, it's a customs brokerage. So he asks his people, do we need to hire somebody new? But he's the one who structures the decision. And it also, he keeps everything in his system as up to date with the software and with the customer relationship management and so on. And he's gone from, it was just him, to he has 23 licensed brokers working for him. The other one was a company headquartered there, where what they did was hire, this goes to what Paul was talking about. They hire somebody to fit the organization. Then if they needed technical training, they trained them. for that, whatever that was. If they needed statistical knowledge or software knowledge or any of that kind of thing, they got the right person, then they trained them. They didn't start with the technology and go, I need somebody who knows this. They started with the person and then said, okay, we're going to make sure you know what we need you to know.
Hey, I wanted to just throw a couple of comments in. First of all, hey, Jesus, thanks for checking us out while you work. Always nice. And then Alan said something that got a spot on from Ray Gerber. He said sales, marketing, customer service, etc. are specific skill sets. The failure is when they're disconnected. Does anybody disagree with that?
Can you say it again? I didn't hear it.
Oh, I said, Ed, you're a great guy. You didn't hear that? That's a shame because you might not ever hear it again.
Does anybody agree with that?
Absolutely.
We love Ed.
Yeah.
No, Ed, I was just saying, Alan Berkson left a comment that said, sales / marketing / customer service, etc. are specific skill sets. The failure is when they're disconnected. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Alan has always been a wise man.
Well, let's not get carried away or
anything.
Go crazy here. And Ray agreed. And seemed like there. Oh, Paul and I just wanted to mention someone that has been in the CRM industry for years, and we just found out. Really, I found out today. I think Paul, you found out today too.
Yeah.
John Gravely. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that name, but he goes back a number of years in the CRM space. He used to have a company called C360. And it was a Microsoft CRM partner. Then I don't know. I think he must have sold that off. And then a couple of years later, he had another company called Click Dimensions, which is really focused on marketing automation in the Microsoft partnerships. We just found out he passed away
Right.
at the age of 53.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Sorry to hear it.
Like over the weekend, I think.
Yeah, we just found out about today, and I mean, I know Paul knew him. I know him. I actually remember going to his office about 4 or 5 years ago. They were based here in Atlanta, and he's a smart guy. I mean, Click Dimensions was a really good partnership with Microsoft in terms of marketing automation. Because let's face it, Microsoft CRM lacked that component. It's a big piece.
Was it the virus?
Didn't say anything, just that he passed away. So
Click Dimensions, actually, he meant for many years, John wanted to sell Click Dimensions to Microsoft, which actually would have been a good acquisition on Microsoft's part. Because they addressed the mid-market, but Microsoft didn't want to buy them, and I knew that too. And I kind of talked to John about other options. Luck of the draw, turns out that they were acquired. John sold his actual, he sold the company to Excel KKR about, I want to say 4 years. When did I mean? 2016.
it might have been like 4 years ago. Somewhere.
Yeah, it was 2016 because it was when Smart Communications got sold. It's from under the same exact year. And it was a good acquisition for John, so he's able to live very comfortably, at least the last 4 years. But he was a good man, a really, really good man. So he's a guy who I genuinely will be missed. I'll tell you.
Yep, absolutely.
If there's no bit, could you share it, please? I'd like to find out more.
Yeah.
I don't think I know the guy.
What I'll do is I'll send to everyone on this chain. I'll send an email with a link.
Yeah, I know. I tweeted it. The link to there was a write-up on the Microsoft Dynamics blog or something like that.
Yeah,
and he was really big into that. He was really big into that ecosystem.
And the company it's an exceptionally smart company too. I mean, it was the new CEO or the CEO since John left was Mike Dickinson, who's a really good guy too. And he's the one. That's how I found out. He actually went on Facebook, I think it was, or LinkedIn rather, and pass the word about John's passing today. So, all right. So listen, obviously we're not going to have a whole lot of time for introductions.
Well, I thought you had another question. Weren't you going to?
Yeah. What's question number 2?
Everybody, introduce yourselves at once.
Yes.
Create the new Tower of Babel. So anyway, this is great, of course, and thank you all for, by the way, being on the very first public one, which is interesting. We just kind of want to see what would happen. Best I can say is there's plenty more of these coming, as all of you know, and registration link works for everyone every week. So sign up, right? You guys, I guess next week, I hope.
Yep. And this is it gets you a chance to watch my hometown. I'm going to switch over here. My hometown is about to host the launch of the Biden, or I like to say Joe Kamala ticket in Wilmington, Delaware. How often do you see Wilmington, Delaware? I've never ever seen.
Wow, right?
Except for corporate lawsuits, usually.
Yeah. There's nothing like a good corporate lawsuit to make you feel like homesick. But anyway, so
Credit card state.
that's it. Now, anyway, so yeah, this has been interesting. It actually seemed to have held up. We got some comments and some questions, and yeah, it was cool. You guys, as usual, you had a great conversation, so that always helps.
Brent, what kind of audience did we have out there?
Let's see. Well, your family is kind of busy, so that cut it in half.
Dang it.
And so this is on 4 channels. It's got to just, and it's what's the word? It's sequential.
Oh, it's constantly moving around. For quite honestly, I don't know if I could ever trust these stats, because I'll just give you a LinkedIn example. So now what's going on here, of course, is a live stream, and this is actually live real time. So I will see, like, let's say 10 once we're done recording or done with the live stream, it'll say 10 people were listening live. Now you would think that 10 would be a pretty solid number because you're not live anymore. I could go back like a couple of hours later and look at the stats, and now it's like gone from 10 to 12. What happened? Because I was definitely not, doing a live stream when 2 additional people all of a sudden showed up as being on the live stream. And then the next day, it could be up to 15, 18, or 19. So I have no idea how accurate these stats are, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. Ultimately, we go on when we do the regular shows, we actually look at depending on which stream, it's viewing minutes or viewers. Again, depends on which stream. So, and that's based on where you're going to always see the biggest numbers, and they get really big, and then they can go into the thousands. It's on viewing minutes and viewers on the 2-minute clips, the 3-minute clips that Brent cuts from the shows, right? That's where you really see enormous reach. It just starts blowing up. Those numbers blow up considerably. Where, I mean, for example, we do absolutely no PR around YouTube at all. So you'll see on YouTube, you'll see 10, right? But then when you look at viewing minutes, you'll see 7,200, right? So, but not on YouTube, right? Somewhere else.
That just means one person is looking at this over and over and over and over.
They're in love with it. Or they created a tab that they leave on for 24/7.
Isn't that what you use Mechanical Turk for? You just hire somebody just to sit there and watch, in a developing country. Let's jack the numbers up.
That's great. So the other thing, so you guys know, this is one last information. So the Battle of the Bands now is officially at, I'll wait till Bob absorbs that. And
thank you, absorbed.
Battle of the Bands is BYOB, which stands for Bring Your Own Band 2020, is up to 11 bands locked and loaded, including Ed's company, Elements.cloud. And we have SAP. Of the big 4, 3 of the 4 are in. SAP's in, Oracle's in, Salesforce is in. Salesforce is really in. I mean, my God, man, they're like ruthless. They said when I asked for confirmation, they said, no, we're in. We're going to win, and they're really pushing it.
Wow.
It's
you ever hear back
disappearing
from
right
Schneider?
before my very eyes, by the way.
And we've got 4 other bands who are in the sort of end point of consideration, meaning they're pulling things together to make sure they can do it, including a couple of larger players. Oh, and Servicenow is one of the bands too. I don't know, you go to LinkedIn, you'll see I have a list. I'm keeping a running update on LinkedIn about all the bands who are in. So look for once we get all the registration forms in with all the name of the band members and the songs they're going to do, get it locked and loaded, then we'll start doing a lot more PR on it too to get it out. So, by the way, here's the other thing. It's going to be the happy hours. This is Brent's idea, which I think is brilliant. The happy hours are going to be one of the judges.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know how that's going to work yet, meaning we haven't figured it out. Like, will it be multiple happy hours? We'll look, and then we come up with some cumulative, answer. So there's going to be essentially physical judge, like singular judges. So the Brent and I, the 2 players in residence, which is Nicole and Ginger Conlon. That's 4. Another judge who will be musically knowledgeable. Well, Brent is, but nobody else is. Then there'll be a happy hours, which will be a judge, and then there'll be a popular vote. Okay, and that will determine the winners. So 15 bands, there will be first, second, and third place. If it only ends up 11, maybe it'll just be first and second. We'll see.
American Idol, watch out.
They got to come with some serious stuff because we've been privy to some of the things that are being explored as being a part of this, and there's some crazy stuff out there.
There's some heavy hitting going on in this one. Let's say this: a lot of companies not only have people who were formerly professional musicians, they have a number of people who are formerly professional music producers.
Wow!
And
CRM's got talent.
That's it. That's a great name.
CRM's got talent.
That's it.
Oh yeah, but Simon Cowell just broke his back, so I'm not going to.
That's a fantastic.
Right. So
go out and trademark that, Stephen.
I think we have something there.
We're not setting that one up for a vote yet. So right now, whoever's on a series of happy hours, that it'll be one or multiple. This again, we'll figure it out. Of certain weeks, will be the voting happy hour judge. So we'll keep you posted. It'll be very popular.
Cool.
All right, guys.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
By the way, the sun
Excellent
is
time.
Thanks for
you all.
including me.
Awesome. Stay dry, Ed.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Hi, guys.
Fantastic discussion, folks.
Yeah, it was. Way to go, Eric.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, everyone. Paul, for inviting me. Really enjoyed
Just
it.
keep coming on, man.
Yeah, I'm just gonna figure out a Wednesday afternoon to keep clear so I can drink a beer and fit in a little bit better.
You probably have to move to California to drink a beer.